The following is a holiday replay bonus episode. This podcast has been made possible by Workday.
Hello, this is Todd McElhatton, CFO of Zora, and you're listening to CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 784.
One of the first things I did when I got to the company was do a teach-in on, of all things, discounted cash flow analysis. The last thing you want a people leader talking to your entire company about. But my perspective was if they could build the things they'd build, they were smart enough to understand finance, which isn't all of that complicated. And I wanted to make people understand, the durability of cash flows is what drives long-term value creation. And I wanted to align our conversations around, durability and long-term margins and those things, and point out to our kind of new product development and our more strategic folks, these are the things that move our position in the value chain and where profits are available.
Hey, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Brandon Maultasch, CFO of MOLOCO. Last October, shortly after being named CFO of machine learning company MOLOCO, Brandon Maultasch decided to forego yet another management meet and greet to instead engage a broader gathering of MOLOCO employees on the virtues of discounted cash analysis. Perhaps a more traditional point of engagement for incoming CFOs might be a few ruminations about the possibility of an IPO in the company's future. However, for Maultasch, the IPO is an important milestone, but it's not the destination. Maultasch wants MOLOCO's workforce at large to know that it's the durability of cash flows that will drive long-term value creation at the machine learning company. Our talk with CFO Brandon Maultasch begins after this. In a world that's always changing, one thing never does. Your need to adapt, your need to evolve, your need to grow. That's why we built Workday, a single finance, HR, and planning system that can change as your needs change and evolve as the world evolves. To learn how Workday is helping mid-size organizations embrace the future with confidence, visit us at workday.com. Hello, we're speaking to Brandon Maultasch, CFO of MOLOCO. Brandon, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Jack.
So, Brandon, we always begin with this question. We ask you to look back and share some of those experiences you feel prepared you for this role, the CFO role. What would come to mind for you?
Yeah, sure. So I spent the last 11 years in investment banking, always working with software and internet companies, primarily advising founders and founder-backed and venture-backed companies on raising venture capital, growth equity, doing mergers and acquisitions, and IPOs. I had a chance to work with a lot of great companies and founders like Lyft, Pinterest, Palantir, DoorDash, Olo, and Slack, and learned a tremendous amount about both the technology industry and the life cycle of technology companies and paradigms, and the financial underpinnings and the business decisions that drove the long-term value creation and the moats within those companies. And I had a blast doing it. I'm one of those rare people who liked investment banking quite a bit. Planned to do it for quite a while longer before I met Ikchin, who's the founder of MOLOCO. I got the chance to work with the company, advise them on the Series C fundraising transaction we did. We raised $150 million from Tiger Global at a $1.5 billion valuation. And after 6 months of working with the company, came and joined them as CFO. And it's been a phenomenal ride. And we've been doing a lot of things.
Can we touch on just your very early, your launch, more or less? Let's say you got 2 degrees. You got an MBA and you got a law degree. Were you thinking business, or were you thinking business and law somewhere intersect, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, so undergraduate, I went to Tufts University, very much liberal arts focus. I got a degree in economics, which I thought was the closest thing to business you could get at a liberal arts school. Didn't have much to do with business at the end of the day, and double majored in English as well, and a lot of creative writing and literature and criticism. I went to law school for the very good reason that I didn't know what I wanted to do after school. That's how a lot of people who get a liberal arts education wind up. And I, loved law school. Went to NYU, but it was really a little bit more of an academic pursuit for me, and realized pretty quickly after seeing a couple summer internships and seeing how these rooms worked and how these processes worked, that was the wrong side of the table. And if you wanted to be driving, the transactions that you were working on, you really wanted to be a principal, at a company or at an investment bank, and helping do some of the strategic analysis and advice. And so I realized that pretty quickly. Got into the JD MBA program. There were 12 of us that year at NYU, and interned at an investment bank. Was lucky to find the tech industry early, the consumer internet and software space specifically, and just fell in love with tech businesses, and was really inspired by the founders I met. And investment banking is an amazing place to be if you're a curious person. You get access to some very inspiring people, cool companies, and you get to ask a lot of questions. You get to take a rigorous approach to analysis, and begin developing, theories. And from law school, I think that the most relevant part to my job is that everything you're doing in investment banking is constructing an argument. It's an argument about what's going to happen in the future with this business based on the historical performance. And there's a lot of different levels at which you can do that. You kind of start doing that with financial analysis, with a P&L and a balance sheet. And then, you go through a couple processes, and you start learning what questions you're going to get on that. And you go a level deeper into the operating metrics of the company and the activities, the inputs that actually drive the financial statements. And you get this wonderful access to CEOs and CFOs, and you can ask anything you want to ask, and you can ask for any data that you want to see, and you start learning new analyses and new ways to cut the data. And then in the diligence process, you get to see how a dozen really smart investors will pick apart the company and the materials that you put together. And you start intuiting what the 10 questions every investor is going to ask at first. And you get that data and you cut it every way before they can. And you start constructing better and better arguments that are based on the inputs of a financial model. And they start withstanding scrutiny. And they're really, a lot of what I did was mergers and acquisitions or private capital raising, pre-IPO raises. And private investors get a lot more access to data than what a public investor gets. You really can ask any question. You get the full kind of customer list. You can do all the cohort analysis you want to do. And so you can develop a really good understanding of what the inputs are that drive financial performance. And ultimately, the lens turns to value creation. Because if you're if you're selling part of a company, whether it's in an IPO or a private financing, there's always valuation involved, and the arguments that you're making, in each line of the financial model are ultimately arguments about what the future cash flows of this business are going to be and what they're worth. And so then the lens expands, and you get into conversations about what drives value. The only thing that drives value really is durability. As you know, if you've done enough discounted cash flow analysis, all of the value is in the out years. And it's about long-term margins, the defensibility of those margins, and really the only way to create value is by creating durable competitive advantage in the long run. And so then you start building on strategic frameworks on top of that to understand, how do you wind up with a durable competitive advantage and profits that will last in the future? And you get to start integrating things from Clay Christensen or Hamilton Helmer, and it can be a really, you can be as rigorous as you want to be, and you can apply as many things as you can, and really what you're doing is you're making these arguments about value creation with more and more rigor. And you have to start understanding what the business landscape and the competitors. And the question is always in tech, isn't Microsoft gonna kill you, clone you? Isn't Amazon gonna do this? And you start having to really understand what's durable, what changes in the industry, where profits accrue in a value chain. And then, for me, the really interesting thing that happens, the exciting thing that happens is these arguments you're constructing, they're arguments about what's going to happen in the future. And you start asking, the CEO, sometimes the thing that you're saying, should happen isn't in the plan. And you get to say to the CEO, why isn't it in the plan? I understand cause and effect here, and that might be a good thing for the business to do. And what happens is the arguments that you're constructing eventually become recommendations, and you have these moments where you can influence a business, you can present something to a board, and it clicks, and you start seeing the actual business, take your advice, whether it's on M&A transactions, strategy, organic investments, and that's it's thrilling. It's really exciting, and for me the CFO role is the chance to kind of take all of that fundamental analysis of all of those things, and then apply them to making better business decisions with data every day, and to do it with a bunch of people who are smart and inspiring and capable. It's phenomenal opportunity.
Wow, outstanding! Wonderful overview as far as the role of an investment banker goes. That was a terrific overview for all of us. Hey, you invested 8 of your years with that overview in mind and everything you learned along the way to fully express that. You were at RBC Capital Markets, and I'm wondering, as you caught up with peers at other investment banks, what distinguished sort of your experience from theirs? We've had a lot of Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, not RBC Capital Markets. I'm curious, do you think there is a cultural difference or something that was maybe a better fit for you or worked out for you better? Again, more than 8 years at RBC, and that's not unusual, but that's a good investment or career building years.
Yeah, no, I would say so. I mean, we started out when I joined the firm. I joined with a group who came from Lehman and Barclays to kind of restart the tech group, and we were kind of a co-manager on IPOs, not very well known in the tech space. And we wound up being, over the years, we kind of built this book runner practice and M&A and private financing practice. We wound up being the most active book runner of internet IPOs specifically. That was a practice that my mentor, former boss Tim Carman, built, and then I helped grow. And we were on more deals than anyone. And I think it was a great opportunity for me because you didn't go in being a known quantity and having that business card. And so you had to find ways to be differentiated, to win with content and analysis and rigor, and to build connections with founders. And for me, I was never going to be the person who did it with my charisma. I always felt like I've always been in awe of the founders of these businesses. I've been interested in them, and I felt like I wanted a seat at the table, and I knew I was going to have to earn a seat at the table. So I think at RBC that was the mentality. We all were going in understanding that we wouldn't be a known quantity, and we better have something really interesting to say, really insightful to say. So work a little bit harder. Try to present original perspectives, and focus on the actual work of it. And that was a formula that worked well, and we were able to develop a whole team and a lot of talent around higher touch services, more original perspectives, and it resonated. And eventually, we built a reputation, and we were really successful in the market.
When you say higher touch services, can you give us an example?
Yeah, sure. So there's you can do investment banking in a lot of different ways and at a lot of different levels. And I would point out to managing directors in our group, to junior bankers, and say, I assure you that these two individuals have never had the same conversation with a client. They've never said the same sentence to a client. Their books don't look the same. They're talking about totally different subjects, and they're both trusted advisors, and they're both building nice franchises here. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. For us, we would be very active in, on an IPO. You'll have, 5 banks on an IPO. 2 or 3 of them are going to do all of the work, be in the room, drafting the S1, telling that story. And, you can kind of sign up a deal and then send your VP, send your number 2 to do that drafting. And it can be kind of a task, just, a part of the process that banks, do. And you can see really quickly, who's putting effort into it and who it's important for, and who this is just sort of another process step along the way. And, that's a process, a collaborative process that we dug deep into and just loved, and really used it as an opportunity to articulate what was unique about the business. Start, sort of at the end. Everything is a discounted cash flow analysis at the end of the day. And the question you're answering is why will this company be, continue to take market share, continue to be profitable? Why will it endure, et cetera? And you kind of work backwards to articulate where the industry is going, what the opportunity is, what the differentiation is, and to do that, in a way that's authentic to who the company is and the company's voice, and all of that is. It's a cool process. And then, you need to do it with data too. You need to do it kind of always bottoms up and top down, with the end in mind, and the beginning, and the reality of historic financials, because the story has to tie together, and it has to reflect reality. And so we spent a lot of time, we did the work, and we did the work before drafting sessions, after drafting sessions. We did the benchmarking analysis, with a great deal of intentionality. And you can get a lot of different levels of service from specific investment bankers.
Now, along the way, you were from time to time approached by recruiters, without a doubt, and there were other opportunities out there, a number of which you clearly expressed no interest in. What was it about this one that finally you said yes? In our recent interviews and over time as well, someone like yourself might not come as a CFO all the time. It might be where you're going to head up investor relations for a period, or you might come in as a very senior role, but not necessarily the CFO. This time,
you arrive as the CFO. So I always like when, in a particular recent interview as well, I press down and say, how'd you do that? And very often it's, as he described it, it was a sponsor. He had someone stepped up who he had worked with on an IPO in the past and felt they knew what he was capable of and that he was ready for a CFO role. Was it something similar?
Yeah, it was. So I worked with MOLOCO for 6 months on the Series C raise. So I got to they got to interview me over a long period of time and actually understand what my perspectives and capabilities and skill sets were. And I got to get to know the business really deeply. I had I had the chance. We had tier one investors, real blue chip folks dissecting the business at every level imaginable, both the financial operating profile, the vision of the business and the actual traction and team. And, the more layers you dug down into the story, the more impressive it was. So when Ikjin and Brian, the COO, took me to dinner and asked me to join as CFO, it was not what I was planning on doing, but I realized it was an incredibly unique opportunity. For me, there were other companies, that were interesting to me at different points, but there's a lot of Venn diagrams for me that would have, had to have aligned. I love the technology industry. I wanted to be at a company that had true, technology differentiation. This one does, and that other businesses could build on top of. I've always, admired companies like Shopify and Stripe and Olo that are enabling platforms for other companies. I knew I wanted to be at a software business with high gross margins. This was just the alignment of so many different things, and a totally visionary founder and brilliant team that we're building in a massive market for the very long term. And it had remarkable success with what they built. So for me, it was, a really wonderful opportunity where, I was making a career decision for many years to come, that this was a business that I believed, I could add a lot of value to with my, kind of my skill set, my focus. A lot of times you're right. The CFO, the investment banker to CFO is thought of as somebody who's going to, communicate to investors, communicate to the board of directors, et cetera. And that's all stuff that I love to do. But the bigger, role for me is the fundamental thought process of how do we create long-term value? How do we create this incredibly take this incredibly differentiated technology and make sure that we put it in places and establish business models that make it endure for a really long time and live up to its potential. So that's what we're doing.
We want to ask you about MOLOCO now, and we'll segue back. I do have a few questions about some of the past experiences you may have had, but tell us about MOLOCO. What was it? What does this company do? What are its offerings today?
Yeah, sure. So MOLOCO is a machine learning company in the ad tech space, in the advertising tech space. So the founder, Ikjin, was is a machine learning pioneer. He was one of the earliest machine learning engineers at YouTube shortly after it was acquired by Google, and built the first machine learning products at YouTube, and then built the monetization stack, the way that they sold ads and optimized via machine learning. And then he was an early employee at Android at Google, shift over there and built their entire data infrastructure. So really had the an early view on the power of machine learning to drive digital advertising. And you kind of fast forward, and the reality is Google and Facebook won digital advertising. Those two companies combined take more than 50% of digital ad dollars, and part of it is the wonderful owned and operated properties they have. But that doesn't explain. That explains about half of their scale. and the machine learning optimization that they built to target the right customers, to put products in front of people that turn into transactions. That's the difference. And if you look today, Facebook, their ARPU, the revenue that they're getting from each customer on their platform is about 5 times higher than Pinterest, 3 times higher than Snap. And that differential on a per user basis is the power of machine learning. And Ikchin founded this business to take that wonderful technology that nobody else was going to have the skills or the capital to build, and put it in the public cloud, and let other businesses build on top of it. Use their first party data to optimize their ad buys and ultimately their ad businesses. So the reductive form that I sometimes explain it to investment bankers is, today we're like Trade Desk for performance advertisers, and the long-term vision is more like Twilio for machine learning based ad optimization.
So we are really catching up with you now, sort of just as your first 100 days might be rolling to an end here. I think my timing's not too far off. You arrived in October, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. That first 100 days and your priorities. It's one of the more recommended books. I'll share something with you up front here that people stepping into a CFO role often recommend at the end of the podcast. Tell us something about that first 100 days in terms of how you were prioritizing. What needed to get done first?
Yeah, well, I had the benefit of coming into a remarkably mature finance and accounting organization. We have a VP finance and a controller who are incredibly talented, and in a little over 2 years went from QuickBooks to NetSuite, and to being on a 6-day monthly close schedule, and getting a Big Four audit done. So a lot of that infrastructure was in place, which was phenomenal. And I could come in and my primary role at first was to ask questions, and to drill down and understand the operations of the business and the cause and effect, and try to identify the input metrics, the activities that were driving the results, and really just understand where we were today, begin to develop strategies for value creation, and put in the infrastructure for the future. So the business is quite large and has grown really, really quickly. In 2018, the company did $3 million of revenue. Last year, we did more than $100 million of revenue. So really rapidly scaling. So for me, that means, if you think about, we're growing 5 times faster than anyone else in our space. If another company has 5 years to build, certain infrastructure, if we're growing 5 times faster, that means we have 1 year to get the same amount of stuff done. So we're putting in place now the infrastructure to be a company that is much larger than we are today. The goal being, this technology scales, this business scales incredibly, and we as a finance and accounting team, let's be an enabler of that growth. Let's not become a constraint of that, and let's do the work today to focus the company on the right input metrics, to create the chassis and the system that lets everybody move faster, and is ready for the scale that we'll be operating at very quickly. So yeah, we're well on our way to doing that, and we do have ambitions to be a public company, and so we're simultaneously pursuing operational excellence and IPO readiness, and new products, new platform solutions at the same time with new pricing structures. It's a lot, but it's an ambitious company that deserves an ambitious back office, And that's what we're building. And we have some really talented people doing it.
Should we expect to see MOLOCO go public in 22?
I don't believe you'll see that. It's we don't put any. We don't want to share any timing specifically. I don't believe it'll be a 2022 event.
Wanted to again, you expressed before when you were talking about the role of investment banker and how you at times would have the opportunity to reach out to CEOs and actually sort of put them on the spot. Why isn't that in the plan? Similarly, you get to look into all of these finance organizations and understand how they're deploying their people. And we'd like to zero in on the FP&A people within these firms, many of which you probably had conversations with frequently, or the team leaders, as you really tried to identify the metrics that were the most revealing when it came to growth or the opportunity they were pursuing. Can you give us a little how you see the FP&A team being used, and whether you, given the perspective you've enjoyed over time as an investment banker, would do it differently?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's really a process of figuring out what are output metrics and what are input metrics, and following, digging down into what are these customer life cycles, what is the, lead funnel look like, what can we do to identify great customers early and put resources against them at the appropriate time. And just drilling down and, looking at our cohorts 6 different ways until we find a way that we think is consistent. Looking at our net dollar retention rates in every way, our sales efficiency, getting the periods right, getting the metrics right. And, we do a pretty, robust monthly reporting package, and we're evolving it every month. There will be 2 or 3 new analyses and different ways of defining some of the KPIs as we go, that, and we kind of develop insights about the business. And then from there, we're surfacing these insights to different stakeholders, different functional business leaders, and, developing new North Stars for them and saying, we actually think that this is the input metric that, if we could move it, it would make a really big difference. And, you tell us if we can move it with people or with technology, but we'll track it for you. We'll show it to you every month in our meetings. And we'll keep you advised of what we think drives long-term value in the business. And let's get all of these brilliant people around trying to solve the right problems and focus that human energy on what we believe is going to create long-term value.
The notion of those gatherings as you're trying to develop those new North Star metrics, or knowing what to measure, what not to measure. Curious who's part of that conversation today. Again, a couple of the phrases you used are terrific, and identifying great customers early. For instance, what I'm getting at is there's the finance team, but are there data folks there part of that, saying, hey, look, we've been able to detect that this customer's behavior has changed in some way, which in the past reflected that they were ready to go to the next level with us. I don't know. I'm just trying to, those types of things. How are they revealed? Is it finance is part of it, but not all of it?
Yeah, that's right. So we're an incredibly data-driven company. We have 65 data scientists and machine learning engineers at the company. So everything we do, it has a lot of data analysis for it. One of the first things I did when I got to the company was do a teach-in on, of all things, discounted cash flow analysis. The last thing you want a people leader talking to your entire company about. But my perspective was this company was smart enough, if they could build the things they'd built, they were smart enough to understand finance, which isn't all of that complicated. And I wanted to make people understand, the durability of cash flows is what drives long-term value creation. And I wanted to align our conversations around durability and long-term margins and those things, and point out to different functional leaders and different data scientists. These are the levers that move our revenue, move our profitability, and point out to our kind of new product development and our more strategic folks. These are the things that move our position in the value chain and where profits are available, and that would make our solutions stickier and build for the near term. So they're collaborative conversations, but what I want to do is provide a framework for those efforts and say, what analysis matters, what are the things we're trying to move, et cetera. And then if you can provide that frame of here's the company's strategy, here's the goal that we're trying to do, and you give a little bit more guidelines and guardrails and knowledge to these absolutely brilliant people, they can go and they can find the insights and the processes and the technical solutions to implement to move those different levers. So the finance team is helping point out what we think some of those levers are, and some of the things that we think are inputs turn out to be outputs. And that process of discussion, argument, learning is to me the process of aligning everyone towards building great products, building a great business.
That's a really interesting. I think many finance leaders are still perhaps a little
withdrawn or organizationally bashful, let's say, when it comes to approaching broader audiences
to discuss things like discounted cash flow analysis. You seemed like, I've got to put it out there. And can you just give us a sense after, and I'm not saying there was a specific meeting, I don't doubt that you're trying to educate 24/7 when people approach you, but was there interest afterwards from some of the scientists who approached you? And do you find yourself being engaged by parts of the organization that surprised you?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, everyone that works at a tech company is, reads the news and is interested in IPOs and is at a company that they believe has an IPO path and, wants to understand that better. So a lot of times the conversation starts with, what's the IPO path, et cetera. And that for me is always an opportunity to say,
that's the door opener. Look,
the IPO is a milestone. It's an important milestone for the company, but it's not the destination. The destination is building a generationally important company that creates value for the long run. Let me talk to you about how an IPO investor, would view the company's value. If they use a revenue multiple, understand that the revenue multiple can be 20 or it can be 3, depending on what the business is, because it's fundamentally a proxy for a discounted cash flow analysis. So you want to know what multiple they're going to put on it? Let's talk about what drives discounted cash flow analysis. What are those fundamental levers? And what you wind up realizing is if you want to be short-term focused and think about, value at some liquidity event, whether it's an IPO or otherwise, the way to maximize short-term value is to make investors understand what the long-term value of the business is. Sometimes the way in is talking about things in the short term, but you find out that optimizing even if you're optimizing for the short term, the right decisions to make are all long-term oriented.
Yeah, excellent. No, the notion that the IPO is really, as you described it, the milestone, but also a sort of I called it a doorway to help educate the organization to these other areas. And you're kind of refreshing in that you're not shy about giving them the benefit of the doubt, that understanding that they have an appetite for learning more just from besides their realm. That's what I'm taking away from.
Yeah, look, for me, my perspective is this business has a really important mission. This is a business that cares about what they're doing and is ambitious and wants to make an impact on the internet economy. And they've done remarkable things already, and so for me, it's my goal is to say to everyone, we can actually do this. We're making remarkable. This is a remarkable business today, and if we want to make the scale of impact that we think is possible, focusing on the long term and understanding how we build a healthy business is important, and we all need to be involved in that project of company creation and focusing on the right things because we have a ton of different opportunities. And if we can focus on the ones that are most meaningful to the business, there's tremendous value in that.
I want to, is talent an obstacle for you? How are you dealing with the environment out there? And is it something that finance is playing a central role in, or how do you view finance's role in answering the challenge that the company might be facing?
Yeah, look, so talent is, always scarce, especially in technology, especially with, the best engineers in the world. That's who we hire. Our machine learning engineers are from Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera. And they've built, massive businesses. Our talent comes here because they're motivated to work on the hardest problems in technology. They don't want to go and build a machine learning platform for another walled garden. They want to build a platform that can abstract some of the hardest things that they're doing and then offer it as a platform service to advertisers to leverage their first party data to grow, or to the next digital platform companies to build their businesses, and ultimately solve very hard technical challenges, but in the service of creating an internet economy that's more competitive, more dynamic, more interesting. I think that's what we're all motivated to do. The combination of the technical challenge and being on the right side of history, and unlocking the diversity and dynamism of the internet is definitely motivating. But from the finance perspective, we need to compensate our people very well. We have a keen eye on it, making sure that we're leading on that front, and not being responsive, and we do, and we'll continue to. But yeah, really making people aware of kind of the broader mission and what we're doing, I think, is the most important thing we can do.
All right. Well, we're up to our signature question where we like to ask our guests to share a finance strategic moment. You've had, 12 of these every day, but we're asking you to tell us about a moment of insight that you've experienced along the way in your career. And again, you've had many of these, where your lines of sight into the organization, maybe it was a client organization, allowed you to see an opportunity or a risk or something that was being ignored or was obscured in some way. And you acted on it. And you either pointed the team in a different direction, you avoided a risk, you pursued an opportunity, whatever it may have been. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So mine will be about people. For me, my focus clearly from the conversation, I view the CEO as a steward of long-term value creation. That's the job. And there's kind of two components of it. There's everything is a discounted cash flow analysis, and everything is people. Because the DCF is made up of a bunch of inputs, and the inputs are all activities that are driven by people. One of the things I saw from Brian Roberts, he was the CFO of Lyft when I worked with him on the IPO. Now he's CFO of OpenSea. What I learned from him was the importance of the CFO role as a people leader. And I've always viewed aligning and motivating human energy as, really the highest calling. That's my wife is a founder, a nonprofit founder, and that's what she did. That's her superpower, aligning and motivating people. It's ultimately people who drive all of these activities and that really matter. And Brian had this, viewed himself as a mentor to these young founders, John and Logan at Lyft and now at OpenSea, and somebody who could guide them into, the capital markets, but also into, business maturity in themselves as executives. And I kind of witnessed this during the IPO. these drafting rooms, you'll come in and you'll have 5 banks and 2 law firms, and there's a lot of egos flying around. And the guy who thinks he's the most important is the one who often gets to control the conversation. And Brian set these ground rules and created a structure where everybody's input was invited, but there was structure where each person was going to present feedback on a certain topic for 5 minutes, and then John and Logan were going to respond, what they thought of it, and then we'll move on to the next person. And it was organized in this way where the guardrails got the most out of the human talent that was in the room. And it was, both democratizing and it aligned, all of these talents towards a common goal. And, I think about that a lot, that ultimately it's the people that matter. And, I think Brian understands that intuitively, and he's just a great people leader. And that's something I aspire to be as well.
As your organization's information needs change and evolve, the folks at Workday want you to know there's a single finance, HR, and planning system designed to serve those needs. Learn how Workday is helping mid-size organizations embrace the future with confidence. Visit workday.com.
We're going to jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round, where I ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We want you to think back. I know it wasn't too long ago, but if you could go back in time as you were accepting this position and give yourself some advice, what would it be? You're giving yourself advice just as you're sort of stepping through the door here.
It's always about people. Keep clicking through the numbers until you get to the person at the other end of the number and understand what the underlying activity is that's going to move the number.
That comment. Many finance leaders historically, that was not what they would have said. And I think we're hearing more and more sort of the light bulb go off. And you shared your experience, how it became central for you. But would you agree? I mean, you've known a lot of CFOs over time, and it's not always their strong suit, people.
Yeah, I've seen all different kinds of backgrounds become great CFOs. They come from different places. I think the most successful ones, do create teams that put in place systems and processes and are motivated towards excellence and vision. And I don't think you can be a great leader of any kind without caring about the people who are working for you and making an effort to align their interests and motivate them. But maybe you can. But I think the ones that I've seen be the most effective could communicate, the things that they were doing, the why, and bring teams along with them to do the shared work.
We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side, and we're looking for a personal habit that you have, or maybe it's part of a daily routine that you've had over time that's kept you on an even keel, made your day productive, whatever it might be. Anything come to mind when we ask for a personal habit? This might be something your wife would tell us rather than a work colleague, something you do, something you're known for.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's running is kind of my happy place, my meditative place. I love to be out on the trail. I have a dog, a German Shorthair Pointer, who's an amazing athlete, and being out there and running and watching her, it's just all of my best ideas come during runs. All of my clarity, and all the things I'm afraid of, you can kind of face on a run. And I'm a better person after I get back from that. It's a great way to de-stress as well. That's probably the habit that I'm that's the biggest part of my life.
Well, thank you for that. And we also like to ask if you have a book recommendation. Doesn't have to be a business book. Might be something you escape with. Anything come to mind when we ask for a book selection? We love putting you
Well,
on the spot.
Yeah. I'll give you a business book. It'd be Seven Powers by Hamilton Helmer. That's
Mm.
really, creates some of this linkage between good strategy and how you build power in markets, how you build how you build durable competitive advantage, and how that flows into the life cycle of a company. That's one of my favorites. That was sort of a little bit of a Rosetta Stone for a lot of the things I'd learned via the case method, via looking at 1,000 companies. That kind of was a top down encapsulation that I thought was a really good summary and useful.
You mentioned
Well,
Clayton Christensen before. Is there anything that resonates with you with him? We've had his some of his work recommended in the past, but I'm curious why you mentioned you mentioned him. I'm curious why.
Yeah, it's the tie between the two for me is, kind of the innovator's dilemma questions and, how incumbents get disrupted. And there's this idea of, counter positioning that an incumbent might make what seems like a good decision to them because it's preserving their customers and growing. But you can counter position to them by creating an offering that would be somehow jeopardize their existing business and where they can't compete. And, orthogonal competition is, I think, just the most interesting idea in the world that the competitors you should be worried about aren't the ones who do exactly what you do. And that's been the recent history of the technology industry because, most companies, good companies don't get beat by a head-to-head competitor. They get beat by Microsoft doing what you do and giving it away for free because it's part of a bundle of some other goal that they're after. So if your focus is on long-term value creation, you really need to understand not just your competitors today, but what might be the motivations of everybody else that's tangentially in your space, because they have different motivations, and there's a lot of power in the largest tech companies. I think the idea of counter positioning and doing things that they can't do is probably the most powerful concept that I take out of both of those two writers.
Wow. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for those. We are up to our final question, which is where we're going to ask you to look forward the next 12 months and share your priorities as a CFO of MOLOCO. What would those be?
So I would say it's building the team, building systems, creating a cohesiveness, and we're doing everything that we do more systematically, improving our communication, improving our speed, putting in those systems that I talked about that are going to scale, to a revenue base that's another 10x from where it is today. We still have a lot of building to do. We're doing it from a great base, but I think this is a generationally good technology company, and it deserves a best-in-class finance and accounting and back office team, and that's what we're building.
Brandon Maultasch, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you so much for having me, Jack.
Hello, listeners. Do us a favor. Be certain to subscribe to CFO Thought Leader on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an Android user, check us out on Spotify or Google Play. If you like the show, please recommend it to a friend.